If you like the Wildcard podcast, and I really hope you do, you should try out NPR Plus. With NPR Plus, you'll get to listen to our show sponsor-free. You'll also get access to our bonus episodes and other perks across more than 20 of NPR's most popular podcasts. Give a little, get a lot in return. Visit plus.npr.org. What's a piece of advice you were smart to ignore?
Oh, boy. Well, where do I begin with that?
I'm Rachel Martin, and this is Wildcard, the game where cards control the conversation. Each week, my guest chooses questions at random from a deck of cards. Pick a card 1 through 3. Questions about the memories, insights, and beliefs that have shaped them. My guest this week is the literary icon Margaret Atwood.
My usual way of reacting to people's advice that I didn't agree with was my inner voice saying, "You're an idiot."
The first thing most people think of when they hear the name Margaret Atwood is The Handmaid's Tale, and that makes sense. That book catapulted into pop culture when Hulu turned it into a series starring Elizabeth Moss. But to define Atwood by that particular book, that particular story of a dystopian America where women are enslaved, raped, and forced to bear children, as provocative as that is, it's just a small part of Margaret Atwood's life work. She's published dozens of books, including a new book of poetry coming out called Paper Boat, which is a collection of 60 years of her poetry, including some new works. Other things to know about Margaret Atwood before this conversation. She is a proud Canadian. She knows how to start a fire in the wilderness. She enjoys the company of frogs, snakes, and maybe the occasional slug. She is super into weeding. She is usually the smartest person in any room, and I'm pretty sure she could win Survivor if she decided it was worth the effort. With that, it is my great pleasure to welcome Margaret Atwood to Wildcard.
Hello, Rachel.
Hello. It's great to meet you. It's a real thrill. How do you feel about games in general?
Well, I've played them a lot, but they're usually card games.
Uh-huh.
Hearts, we played Hearts a lot. Do you know Hearts?
I've heard tell of this game. I
Yes.
myself am not a card person,
You're
which
not.
is a great irony considering I am now hosting what has been dubbed a card game. But, we just let that slide. So you ready to hear this, how this is all going to go down?
Fire away.
Okay. I've got a deck of cards in front of me.
Yes.
On each one, there's a question that I would love for you to answer.
Okay.
You're going to choose randomly 1 through 3.
So this is Trivial Pursuit for your guests.
Yeah, about your own life. So you have an
Yeah.
advantage.
Or else it's a covert Secret Service operation to find out things about people they wouldn't normally divulge.
I like where your mind's going. I'm a little bit afraid of it at the
No,
same
you
time.
don't.
And maybe that's how everyone feels. Okay, but I have to tell you there are 2 tools that you can
Okay.
use, okay? If I ask a question and you're just not feeling it, you can skip it. Okay? And then I'll replace it with another one from the
All
deck.
right.
And the other tool is a flip. You can put me on the spot and ask me to answer the question before you do.
Oh, Rachel, that's so dangerous.
Isn't it, though? Okay, so that's what you have to work with. We're breaking it up into 3 rounds, a few questions in each round. Round 1, first set of cards. Your
Okay.
choice, 1, 2, or 3.
3.
1, 2, 3. What's a piece of advice you were smart to ignore?
Oh, boy. Well, where do I begin with that? Since I ignored almost all advice. I'll pick something meaningful.
Okay.
So when I was at university, we were given faculty advisors
This is at Harvard.
to advise us, I suppose, about the direction that our life should take. And by that time, I was already writing and publishing poetry, and I had a graduate student scholarship, and my faculty advisor said, "Why don't you just forget all this writing and graduate student stuff and find a good man and get married?"
Come on.
How about that?
Truly?
So this would be 1961. Well, you weren't born, so you don't remember what that was like. But That was a little extreme even for those days.
Yeah.
So my usual way of reacting to people's advice that I didn't agree with was my inner voice saying, "You're an idiot."
Did you keep that as your inner voice, or did those words
You're an
sometimes
idiot?
find their way outside into the
Yeah, I'm
public
afraid I've
domain?
let it out a bit too much. Maybe I should have kept it as an inner voice. But at that moment, it was, "You're an idiot." And okay, is this conversation over yet? Thank you very much. Goodbye.
To get good advice, did you have to, did all your good advice come from good friends?
I'm not sure that my good friends would have been much use at that time because I was quite a lot different from people of that time. But I did have another person on faculty who did give me a piece of good advice, and I'll tell you what it is. Are you interested?
I'm very interested.
Okay, so I really did think this in the days of existentialists and being artsy at university that I was going to go to France, work in a restaurant, live in a garret, smoke gitane, no hope of that, and write masterpieces while coughing myself to death, as in La Boheme. So I thought I would do that.
Très romantique, yeah.
No, I didn't share the whole package with this person on faculty, but I shared enough of it so that they said to me, "I think you would get more writing done if you went to graduate school." And they were right, because I was a waitress in a restaurant a bit later, and I didn't get much writing done. I also got quite thin.
I love that advice because it's so dispassionate, and it doesn't demean the dream.
No.
It's not like, that's a stupid idea, Paris, blah, blah. It was just practical. Like, if you want to be a writer.
Well, I knew I would have to have a job of some kind.
Right.
Because nobody at that time where I was thought they would ever make any money out of writing. Don't be silly. So I knew I'd have to have some sort of job to support my writing habit.
Yeah.
And why not in France? Well, we can think of a lot of reasons why not now at this distance, but it sounded good at the time.
And it worked out, graduate school. 3 more. 1, 2, or 3?
How about the middle one this time?
Okay, 2. What's an experience from childhood that made you realize your parents were only human?
Well, okay, so here's the experience, which was very traumatic for me at the time. I had a cat, and so I wanted a cat. I couldn't have a cat for a long time. We were up in the woods too much. It would get eaten by wolves. So I finally got a cat, and I was very keen on this cat. It lived in my room. It used to bring me presents, dead mice,
dead animals,
as they do. And then I had a baby sister. And one day I came home and the cat wasn't there. Because my parents were worried that it would smother the baby. That was a belief of those times. So they hadn't explained this to me. They had simply dispensed with the cat. And they said, it had gone to a good home, which I don't believe for a minute.
Oh.
There, how about that? I've forgiven them.
You've forgiven them, but you clearly saw that they made a mistake. That's why you...
I thought that they had handled it badly, which they had. So they should have explained ahead of time, but in that generation, you didn't particularly explain things to kids ahead of time. Things happened, and then the children were expected to cope with it.
When we come back, Margaret shares the advice she gives young writers and her secret to combating personal attacks.
The candidates for November are set.
I know Donald Trump's type.
Between now and Election Day,
we are not going back.
A campaign season unfolding faster.
Kamala Harris is not getting a promotion
Than any in recent history.
Make America great again.
Follow it all with new episodes every weekday on the NPR Politics Podcast.
This is Hispanic Heritage Month. The Code Switch podcast invites you to listen to a side of the immigration story you don't hear often, one of joy. Listen as we spend a day at Flushing Meadows Park in Queens, talking to some of the people that make the park their weekend escape. Listen on the Code Switch podcast from NPR.
Wisconsin's presidential vote has often come down to less than 1% of the state's population. On NPR's Consider This podcast, we'll hear what's keeping Wisconsin voters up at night.
We need someone who's going to be dedicated to what's happening for us.
Wisconsin, where just 20,000 votes could swing a state of nearly 6 million. This week on NPR's Consider This podcast.
This message comes from Wondery. Find out how the NYPD transformed into one of the world's most powerful police forces. From Wondery and Crooked Media with Push Black, this is Empire City. Follow Empire City on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Before we start round two, I want to talk about your new book. It's called Paper Boat, New and Selected Poems, 1961 to 2023. Would you read me a poem? The one I'm thinking of is Tell Me Something Good.
Yes.
When did you write that?
Just a couple of years ago.
It's new, yeah.
So things we were already in the period that we're in now, as it were.
I just seized on this. I mean, I just saw the title and I was like, yes, Margaret, I do want you to tell me something good.
Well, I can tell you something bad as well. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I know.
Tell me something good. Tell me something good. Just one good thing. Just tell me something that will get me through the hours, the days, the weeks that bring nothing of any goodness, just more news of other things, like spoiled meat or else raw bones that dogs keep dragging in from God knows where, what bombed-out car or ocean wreck, whose child's ribs wrenched open, what woman's torso torn like bread, whose son's now headless, what trashed home, what oily sludge 100 miles wide on which we feed. The words pour in, the door won't close. Oh, stop, go mute. Just one good thing instead is all I ask. So let's say green buds, or wait, there aren't a lot of those. Just one green bud might do, despite. No, wait. Let's say a person said hello and not unkindly. No, let's say that it got cooler or else warmer, or the rain finished or else it rained, whichever one was needed. No, instead say breakfast. That could do it. A faint shimmering of plates and pearly spoons, a tender cup. What comfort. There. That's 30 minutes past at any rate. The gate defended for a little space. And wasn't that enough? No. Wait.
I love that poem because it feels like you're constantly shifting your own goalposts, right? As we often do.
The world is shifting them on us, Rachel.
Right. Yeah. So you have to, I don't know, lower your expectations constantly for what can bring you joy or make you feel good.
It's a good recipe. High aspirations, low expectations.
This kills my husband because I do this constantly. I prepare for worst case scenarios all the time. And then I'm so pleased when it doesn't happen. And for him, it does the opposite. He's doing fine. But then when I lower an expectation, then he's down here and he can't find his way back up again.
Well, you don't have to tell him you've done it.
Right. That's my problem, is that I say it out loud too much, like so many other things.
This party is going to be horrible. Yeah, you don't want to do that too much.
No, I say that. That's like it's one of my go-to lines,
You could
Margaret.
say it afterwards. That party was horrible.
I have one more question about the book. Literary types are already looking at this and saying, it's just wonderful. We can see the evolution of Margaret Atwood as a writer because it does chronicle your career, and the poems in the beginning are from the early parts of your working life, and there's this arc. Do you Do you go back and read it that way? Do you recognize that arc of your own writerly evolution?
You know things when you're older, and you have experiences when you're older that you haven't had when you're 20. I hate to break this to you, since you're obviously 20.
It's obviously I am. So thank you for recognizing it.
So your preoccupations are different when you're younger, and they're certainly different when you're older. So you get together with your old pals, and we have what we call the organ recital. Got a new kneecap?
Right.
Had a hip replacement?
What surgery you having next?
Enough. Have we had that? And how's your heart doing? So you have to do that first before you get to what you really want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that is what you really want to talk about. So you don't see many poems by 25-year-olds on those subjects. In fact, you don't see any.
Right. Do you look back on your early works and say, oh, she didn't know what she was talking about?
Not quite that, no. I do look back on it, and I think no wonder people found me scary.
Say more about that.
Because I was scary. Not intentionally, but I can see why they found me scary. Poems are pretty intense.
Are you less scary now?
I think simply by virtue of being shorter. Shorter, more white-haired and older. I think unless you're an absolute witch flying around on a broomstick, you're less scary at that point.
Okay, we're moving on. Now we do round 2. 3 more cards. They just keep coming. 1, 2, or 3. Your choice.
Let's do number 3.
Number 3. What was a disappointing experience that now feels like a blessing?
Wow. A disappointing experience that now feels like a blessing. Gosh. There's quite a few of those. Thank goodness I didn't fill in the blank. Yeah. Do ex-fiancés count?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, we could throw in a few of those. But they weren't that, it wasn't that disappointing, to tell you the truth. It was more of a relief. So,
but did you have several ex-fiancés?
Pardon?
You had several ex-fiancés?
You need a selection.
Okay, so there's that. But you just admitted to me that it didn't feel disappointing in the moment. You knew it should have ended.
Well, I think, you're always nostalgic about the past. I think everybody is, to a certain extent. But on the other hand, you couldn't continue on that path. It was obvious. Let's put it that way. Or let us say it was fun at the beginning. There's a Hemingway story in which he's having a camp out with his girlfriend, and she realizes that things aren't the same, and she says, "What's wrong?" And he said, "It's not fun anymore." So I think there are points in your life, for everybody's life, when they think it's not fun anymore.
Yeah. I mean, sure.
It's a pretty crushing thing to say.
I guess, but I don't know. Ernest Hemingway, I don't want to hold up as like my romantic role model.
It's not a question of romantic role model. It's a question of good story writer. And no matter what you may think of his private life, which I know too much about, in our time is one of the game-changing story collections of the 20th century. No, he was a nightmare as a husband and romantic partner, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
He had a horrible mother. Anyway, we won't go there.
That's another game. Wild card, the Ernest Hemingway edition.
The Ernest Hemingway wild card. Bad mom.
Okay.
Her fault.
3 new cards, 1, 2, or 3.
2.
How do you manage envy?
Directed towards me, or envy that I feel?
Envy that you feel.
I don't feel envy.
Do you not?
I do not. I mean, apart from envying tall people.
Have you always been so enlightened that way?
I thought you were going to say, have you always been so short? No. So in high school, I was the normal size, but I don't know what's happened. People got taller. Have you No, you haven't noticed that.
Margaret, you're not that short.
Oh, yes, I am. I just look tall because all you're looking at is my head.
Okay, you have tall energy.
Yes, there you go.
When I asked the question, though, you asked for a definition, envy that you suffered or had to manage, or other people's envy of you.
Yes.
Is that, does that happen a lot?
It has, certainly. Yeah.
Friends? Have you had relationships end because of that?
Oh, usually not. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, I wouldn't say friends. No, I would say, so what I said to young writers who had had a sudden success, I said, within a couple of years, you will have 3 nasty, vicious personal attacks from people you don't know.
And at the root of those attacks is often envy?
As a rule, that happens, particularly if you're younger. So if you're younger, you've come up with a cohort of other writers your age, you make a big success, and then your friends divide into, like the Red Sea, people who can handle it and people who can't handle it. And you find that out pretty quickly. By my age, everybody knows that this is who I am. It's not a big surprise. Right. A lot of my contemporaries are dead.
What were the attacks that were leveled at you in your first couple of years of success?
Some of them were quite funny.
Don't you can't say you're so short, Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, just
someone commenting on your height doesn't count.
Really short. So a lot of it had to do with hair. Medusa hair, frizzy hair, name something about hair. Mm-hmm. Yes, and one of them wrote a satirical fairy tale in which I bit the heads off men and made them into a pile and turned into an octopus. Figure that out.
So you were a Medusa-haired man-hater.
Yeah, and power-mad ladder climbing.
Oh, power-mad.
Yes, power-mad ladder climbing witch.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's evocative.
I thought so, too.
I am curious how you managed that. You were just able to just let it go, or did any of that get under your skin?
No, I'm a vengeful person.
Are you being serious?
Oh, yes, I'm quite vengeful. I can't help it. It's who I am. So I make them into idiotic people in fiction.
Oh, that's a sneaky way to deal with that.
Now she thinks I better watch myself.
I know what's gonna happen in this new book. This annoying radio host. After the break, Margaret talks about premonitions and gives me a palm reading on the fly.
People in Nevada are more racially diverse than a lot of swing states. About 40% of voters in Nevada are not white. Does that shape their views of issues like inflation and immigration? Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are both gambling on Las Vegas. Hear from Nevada voters all this week on NPR's Consider This podcast.
Hey, it's Mike and Ian. We're the hosts of How to Do Everything from the team at Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Every week, we take your questions and find someone much smarter than us to answer them.
Questions like, how do I safely jump out of a moving vehicle?
How do I dangerously jump out of a moving vehicle? We can't help you, but we will find someone who can.
Listen to the How to Do Everything podcast from NPR.
On How to Do Everything from the team at Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, we try to find the answers to all your burning questions.
I'd like to know, how do I get someone to tell me if I smell?
That's the perfect question for us. So we went over to her house and we sniffed her.
Because we care. Listen to the How to Do Everything podcast from NPR.
We'll sniff you, too.
J.D. Vance and Tim Walz had their first and only debate on Tuesday. What happened? The NPR Politics podcast has you covered with all the news and analysis from the vice presidential debate. Listen to the NPR Politics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Okay, this is the last round, and I've got a new deck of cards.
Oh, they're red. Oh, how attractive.
I know.
Yes.
You like that? It's
Yes.
funny. Some people see the red and get afraid.
Oh, really?
They have like a visceral reaction to the color
dear.
red. And immediately you did the opposite. You're like,
That's right. These are my glasses.
Very red.
Yes.
They look amazing. Okay. Well, then this is your color. This is your round. 1, 2, or 3, Margaret Atwood.
3.
3. Have you ever had a premonition about something that came true?
Ooh. Yes.
Would you share it with me?
How many would you like to hear about?
The one you think is the best story.
Writing The Handmaid's Tale in 1984, at which point the critical reaction went along these lines. So in England, where they had done their religious totalitarianism under Oliver Cromwell, they knew they weren't going to do that thing again. So they said, jolly good yarn. So they treated it as completely fictional. Mm-hmm. In Canada, an anxious country where they frequently pose questions to themselves, they said, could it happen here? In the United States, it's split into 2. On the one hand, don't be silly. That will never happen here. We're the world's leading liberal democracy, a beacon of hope to countries all around the world. How could you even suggest that we would go along that path? On the other hand, on the West Coast, where many things begin, they said, how long have we got?
Before the scenarios that you had outlined in The Handmaid's Tale, the oppression of women became reality.
That's right. Yeah, before women's rights got rolled back, in essence. So you could see in the early 80s that was always a possibility. Mm-hmm. And then the Cold War ends in 1989-90. People say, quite wrongly, well, now it's just going to be, liberal democracy all over the place, and, conflict is at an end, and now we're just going to go shopping a lot. So I thought, okay, maybe this has receded somewhat. But as you can see, it came back. Sorry to ruin your day, Rachel.
Is there a sense of satisfaction?
No, I don't feel satisfaction. I would rather have been wrong.
Yeah. Do you think you have a gift in that direction?
You mean, am I psychic?
Yeah.
I don't think so, no. If I were, I would be playing the stock market and betting on horse races.
Yeah, but I read that you read people's palms.
Oh, that isn't anything to do with being psychic. It's just Renaissance science. Mm-hmm. So I don't go, I'm holding your hand and getting an aura feeling. I'm going, I'm looking at your palms, and this is what a Renaissance palm reader would say about them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Not the same as having a premonition.
It calms people down backstage at TV shows.
Is a good party trick.
Yeah, okay. It is. It is. People like to hear about themselves.
Okay.
I can't see well enough.
I'm just kidding. I know you can't. It's okay.
But I can see the shape of your hand. Hold it up. Hold them up again. Both.
Oh. Can you say?
Oh, Rachel, you're a sensitive person.
You can tell that by looking at my hands? Woo! Come on. Oh, Margaret. I'll tell you what I am. A trusting person.
Yeah, I can't say the inside of your hands, but you're probably one of those people who's affected by the wallpaper.
Okay. 3 more cards. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, let's do the middle one.
Have your feelings about death changed over time?
Have my feelings about death changed over time? Well, what do you mean by thinking about death? You mean, are you afraid of it?
Yeah, I guess it's open to interpretation.
I'm not afraid of death, deathity, death. What comes before can be very unpleasant. So I know people who've had horrible hospital and disease experiences. I know people who have ended up in care homes, not knowing who they were, things like that. That's what you are worried about. What anyway, I'm worried about, rather than quotes being dead. I'm not too worried about being dead.
Right.
Am I going to write my own funeral? It's creepy, and I've been to ones like that, but it's kind of fun.
Oh, my mom had a great time planning her funeral. And I remember thinking, that's so macabre. And
no, it's like
she didn't think it was at all.
No, it's like event planning. You're planning a party for people. You want them to have
picking the music.
Anyway, want them to have a good time. I used to be a great birthday party planner. So I would just think of my funeral as a fun time for kids.
Okay. Last question. You pick 1, 2, or 3.
What haven't I done as much of? I think I haven't done as much of one.
What's your best defense against despair?
My best defense against despair. So I'm not much of a despairing person. I don't do despair very well at all. I'm much more.
Does that mean you don't do it, period? Have you never suffered from despair?
Of the total kind, like there's nothing good, it's completely bleak. I will never climb out of this
even momentarily.
pit. Yeah, no. I think it's a temperamental thing. I don't think I was born that way. So crises, setbacks, very discouraging things, awful events. Yes, sure. Total despair, no.
Right. Then I'm going to also take the liberty of changing the word. What is your best defense against sorrow?
Oh, sorrow. Sorrow, that's a different thing, but that's not despair.
I agree.
I think sorrow is natural. And I had a friend once who, in the age when psychiatrists thought it was a good idea to give you a lot of drugs if you were going through grieving and sorrow, and then you just wouldn't feel it. But what that means is you never get over it, because you haven't had that experience, which is a very human one, and everyone has it sooner or later. It's grief. And since I'm now in the land of widows, I'm the person that they phone and they say, will this ever be over? How do I get through this?
We should just say your longtime partner, Graham Gibson, died in 2019.
Oh, yeah. So one day at a time, but don't expect that there will be no sorrow.
So there is not a defense against it. The defense is to just move through it.
Well, why is it something that you should defend against? It's something you live through, but that's not a defense against it. By defense, you mean it's not getting in the door. We're not letting it in the door. Well, that would just be acting. That would be quite fake. I'm fine. Oh, I feel great.
You never do that.
No.
So we end the show the same way every time, with a trip in our memory time machine. So you pick, Margaret, if you would be so kind, one moment from your past that you would like to go back to. It is not a moment that you would change anything about. It's just a moment you would like to linger in a little longer. What moment do you choose?
All right, let's pick 2001. 2001, the first time we went very far north into the Arctic.
This is you and Graham?
Yes. So it was an outfit called Adventure Canada, and we traveled with them really up until now. And Graham loved ships. So yes, that was magic. First polar bears, first glaciers, first icebergs falling into the sea. We were at the place where the iceberg originated that sank the Titanic.
May I ask you to get granular? Describe what it smelled like. What were you looking at? What did it make you think?
Okay, so I took a girl from London on one of these trips, a fellow writer, right out of her comfort zone. She'd never been in such a place before, and she was sitting under a waterfall, wearing the red caribou skin mittens that she had acquired. And she said to Graham, "None of this cares about us, does it?" And Graham said, "No, it doesn't." And she said, "That's very comforting."
I mean, I love that. Did that resonate with you?
Yeah. So there are, you're worried about this and that and this and that and this and that. And of course, you're worried about the climate, and you can see things melting and all of the above. But as I say, it's very big. And you also see life adapting in very clever ways. For instance, you will see trees there that are 200 years old, but they're flat. They put their energy into leaves and seeds, and they keep low to the ground because it's going to be warmer there, out of the wind. Very clever things. You can see tiny little sea creatures about this big. There's a lot of marine life: whales, belugas, narwhals, humpbacks, bunny rabbits. They're white. They're quite large. They're quite tame. Arctic hares.
We're just going to have the end of this interview be you just naming other animals that live in the Arctic, and we'll just let it trail off that way. Margaret Atwood, thank you for doing this. It was a real pleasure. Margaret's new collection is called Paper Boat, New and Selected Poems, 1961 to 2023. Congrats on the collection, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Fun.
We have a Wildcard Plus question with Margaret Atwood for our Wildcard Plus supporters. Margaret talks about her relationship with censorship.
Destruction of knowledge, destruction of books. It's an old motif. It seems to be a power thing that human beings do, particularly when they want to really control the agenda.
You can listen to that bonus episode and every one of our episodes sponsor-free by signing up for Wildcard Plus at npr.org/wildcard. This episode was produced by Ramel Wood with help from Lee Hale. It was edited by Dave Blanchard, fact-checked by Greta Pittenger, and mastered by Neil Tevault and Robert Rodriguez. Wildcard's executive producer is Beth Donovan. Our theme music is by Ramteen Arablui. You can reach out to us at wildcard@npr.org. We'll shuffle the deck and be back with more next week. Talk to you then.
As Election Day approaches, NPR's Consider This podcast is zooming in on 6 states that could determine who wins the White House: Georgia, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Pennsylvania. We'll ask voters in these swing states what matters to them and which way they want the country to go. Follow along with new episodes this week on the Consider This podcast from NPR.
Wait, don't tell me. Fresh Air, up first. NPR News Now, Planet Money, TED Radio Hour, Throughline, the NPR Politics Podcast, Code Switch, Embedded, Books We Love, Wildcard are just some of the podcasts you can enjoy sponsor-free with NPR Plus. Get all sorts of perks across more than 20 podcasts with the bundle option. Learn more at plus.npr.org.